how this group call is going to go is we're going to start off with wins. So what good is happening in the business? And then we're going to go straight into the open Q&A. So where you can ask any questions that might be burning and get advice from clients, coaches. So there's no right or wrong way to go. You can put it in the chat, raise your hand like John is here, or just unmute and fire away. But I would love to start off with wins. I see, John, do you got a win to share? Is that why the hand's up?
After about 6 weeks of uncharacteristic seasonal slowdown, yesterday I landed 3 bathrooms in one day. So that's pretty big day for me.
Yes, that's a pretty big day for most people. Heck yeah.
So little happy dance going on here.
Yeah, as you should be happy dancing. That is so exciting. Sometimes, and probably a lot of clients can testify, sometimes when it rains, it pours. They all come in at the same time and you don't really know why. But
yep, I'll take it.
yes, we're happy to have it. Jordan, I saw your hand fly up first, and then Brent, I'll get to you. Jordan, if you'll unmute for me. I think you might still be muted.
Yep, I was. I accidentally took my hand down instead of unmuting.
You're good.
This is my current situation this morning. But I got kind of 2 wins. One, I came here last February 2023, so I don't know, 13 months ago, and with unbelievably high stress levels in a business that was not doing well. And I just want to say, thanks to Travis and Redmond Growth, first off, for all the help that I've gotten, and just say those stress levels with my business are not even close to what they were. There's a small things that pop up here and there, but that's much more manageable. Secondly, we'd been struggling to get reviews to our business profile, and we made a slight edit. I think I mentioned it. We were going to try it out last group call, and it's working like a charm. Literally every single person that we're in front of and isn't like on the phone or working from home or something, they're leaving us a review. And then I did a search, like an incognito search for electrician in Nashville yesterday. And when I did that, we were actually the top one on the map yesterday. So that was exciting to see too. I don't know if that's happening every time, but that's definite improvement from where we were.
Yes, Jordan. Phenomenal. Would love to kind of ask you, when it comes to being less stressed, what would you say if you had to pick like 2 things? What are the 2 contributing factors that you would say that you have in place now that help with alleviating that stress?
I would say systems and people. Like those 2 things are like the biggest things, and like actually knowing and understanding those systems and then just doing regular training with people makes all the difference. It's huge.
Preach.
Awesome.
Preach. Yes. Bryn, your hand was up first. What's going on with you?
Yeah, we just got local services finally up and running, and our very first lead, the guy says, "Hey, you were number 2, number 1 didn't answer, and here you go. Here's a $260,000 home remodel." So that was quite the introduction to Google Local Services.
Yeah. That is awesome.
So we're headed to contract on it, but it's pretty amazing. So answer your phones. That's the word today. Answer your phones.
Amen. Say it again. Amen.
Answer your phones.
Yes. I love that. Scott, Rick, I see you both here today in the office. I feel like that's a win in itself, that you're both in the office, not working, not in the field. That's huge. What's going on with you 2?
Well, we can tell you they're trying to get us in the field. I don't know. The office ladies are trying to get rid of us. We're getting too many calls.
They're trying to kick you guys out.
So some huge wins for us is our first full year. We've done $1.2 million in revenue with a 14% net. And then our second win is, we started the electrical in 23. Then in 24, we started the plumbing. And then in about 2.5 weeks, we've got a guy coming on, and we're going to add the HVAC. So we're going to have plumbing, electrical, and HVAC. We've already bought his truck, already got it outfitted. So we've got some big wins. And we know this great company called Redmond Growth.
Nicole.
I love to hear it, guys. That is so exciting. It sounds like you guys have more work that you know what to do with right now, that they're trying to get you guys out in the field.
Yeah. We keep having to run some calls ourselves, but that means we can add people.
Yes, champagne problems, I suppose. You know, we're happy to have them. I love that. You guys are awesome. What other wins do we have going on today? Either put them in the chat, raise a hand, unmute. These have been awesome.
Well, I'll kind of piggyback on, I think, John there, when things have been kind of slow and whatnot. And so let me preface this by saying I don't pray for hailstorms and windstorms in Texas. I just pray for God to provide, and He's providing. So.
Oh, that is funny. That is funny, James. He does provide, especially Texas, Oklahoma, Kansas. We tend to always have Arkansas. He provides a lot for the restoration and roofers in that area. That's awesome, James. Well, I have a feeling that's only going to continue. We're getting into springtime, and we all know that's storm tornado season is about to hit us, so we'll be busy. Okay, any other wins today?
Let's go, Joey.
A couple things for us. We've recently started our Burlington Coat Factory project, which is a nice big job for us. We also landed our local humane shelter. They're actually building a new shelter here in our town, and which is going to give us a lot of good exposure for the community. So those are big wins for us, especially coming out of a time, Bryce. You know, we've just been back with Redmond now, I think, a couple months. We started with Redmond, and then guys, whatever you do, don't do what I did, and thought I could make it on my own. So I left, and it didn't work so well. So I come crawling back to Bryce. I'm like, take us back. And we got to the point to where we literally were looking at Tuesday how we were going to make payroll by Thursday. I mean, that's how bad it got. And now, just within a short 2 or 3 months, we're back on track. We're gaining speed. I don't have the stress of wondering how I'm going to make payroll by tomorrow. So that's a plus. We've also found some other tricks that I want to throw out there to everybody. I don't know how all the other states do it. But we've been working with our Work One here in our town, and for plumbing, we get a grant of $5,000 for every employee that we have going through the apprenticeship school that they reimburse us. So, and the reason why I mentioned that is I woke up this morning and I looked at our, first thing I always do is I always look at our bank account. So I get up this morning, I look on and I was like, oh my God, what happened? And we actually got our payout from our Work One for our employees. And for us, the paperwork is simple. You just do your training program for your apprentices and they walk you through it. And we get a $5,000 grant for every apprentice that we have going through the apprenticeship program, which, one, it's extra money, and it also helps offset the cost of the school. So if you guys aren't doing that, I would check into it with your state to see how it works. But it's definitely a lot of, pretty easy free money that's out there for anybody that's got apprentices and stuff that are in the field.
Nice.
That's great advice, Joey. And we love having you back. We are so excited to have you back. And I love hearing the wins coming in already.
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, we're just now in our new office. And Bryce knows we've been working on this thing for 3 years. But, you know, I remember one thing when we first joined Redmond, I reached out to another plumber, you know, because, I was doing my fact checking and my background digging. And I can't remember which plumbing contractor it was, but I do remember them saying, whatever you do, make every meeting, do what your coach tells you to, and everything will be fine. And then I was like, oh, well, I'm just going to leave Redmond. And then I'm like, oh man, we are extremely glad we're back.
Oh, Joey, well, that just made my day. And I would love to know if any clients have any questions about this grant and apprenticeship program.
I'm just wondering how much she paid, Joey. How much did she pay?
Oh, how much should we pay, Joey?
Yeah, I got to send them this gift card now.
It comes in discounts.
Yeah.
Right.
I was
I'm
really
getting a discount next week then.
Oh, that's clever. Okay.
No, but
Go ahead, Bryce.
I was just going to say, I think for you guys that you just got the HVAC and the plumbing and the other additional services in there, that'd be one to look up as well, the Work One. I don't know how it works in other states either, but that's a really good resource potentially. Anything like that too. I wonder if there's other things for other trades, you know, just looking up compensation or kickbacks for investing in training. I'm sure there are.
Yeah.
Just something I haven't thought about.
Yeah. Okay. Well, love that you guys are sharing the wins. Anybody else have one before we go to the Q&A? You can either put it in the chat, raise a hand, unmute, fire away. Going once, going twice.
I got one.
Okay, Chase, tell us.
Well, we've been kind of struggling between CRMs and different platforms, and we've been looking around, and it seems like we're going to transition over to the Redmond CRM just because it's got everything that we need to do. It might not be a huge win, but it's one step closer to being organized and making sure that everybody is, you know, getting the job flows down. So we're pretty stoked on that.
Yes, Chase, that's so exciting.
Nice.
Yeah, and there's a lot. We sent out the email about the estimating, right, Bryce?
Yep.
Yeah,
Mhm.
so CMM, there's a lot that it can do, and we're, you know, constantly looking at what else it can do to add more benefits to you guys. You know, it's a great place. All of your leads go into a central location. You're able to set up built-in automations, keep track of your sales process. It actually reduces the amount of spreadsheets that you're going to need to track things, which is nice too. But outside of that, you can also do scheduling and estimating in it. And so we sent out an email a couple weeks, or I think it was last week, going over that. But if you ever need more help, we have a dedicated team member who helps people with CMM. And so that's one of the benefits of using our CRM system is you've got somebody that you can go to to get answers immediately. So don't hesitate to reach out to your coach if you need more information. Let us know. But for the majority of you, CMM is included in your package. And if it's not included in your package, we can add it to your package. So don't hesitate to reach out. I appreciate the backup there, Maria. She said we use CMM and it's optimized the lead process so much. But this is a client who really uses CMM. And so she's doing the work there of making sure that it is fully optimized. So appreciate that, Maria. Any other wins before we move on? Okay. Well, if any more wins come through, just put them in the chat, unmute. We'd love to hear it. But let's go ahead and jump into the Q&A. What questions do we have? Concerns, grievances? What's on your mind? What are you having a hard time with maybe this week? Or maybe it's something small that you're like, hey, I'm having a hard time figuring this out. There's 30 plus contractors here who probably have an answer. So would love for you guys to fire away. Put it in the chat, raise a hand, unmute. What questions do we have? John.
So working on cash flow management and just general question for the group. I've got a couple of progression payment structures that I've used for various size projects, and I'm a residential kitchen and bath remodeler primarily. Just wondered, general question, if anybody's found a golden mix of 2 or 3 or 4 progress payments in your payment structure that works. I've had a couple of customers express concern about 40 or 50% initial payment for projects that are heavily custom materials. But mostly they've put up with 30% at the front end of the project to pay for custom materials and substantial completion payment and a 5 or 10% final payment. Just wondered what structure you guys have had success with.
Anybody got some thoughts to share before we'll definitely jump in with some thoughts, but go ahead, Anthony.
Hey, I'm kind of new, so I don't know how valuable this is.
If it works for you, Anthony,
It has. So
I love it.
It's worked pretty well. I'm also in kitchen and bath remodeling, so it's a little parallel.
Perfect.
If I'm over 50% material cost, I actually change so that at the time of scheduling that start date, I get 100% of the material cost. That's essentially their deposit. Now I take another 30% of labor when we actually show up to start work. Now in a bathroom, I take my second progress once demo is complete, and then if waterproofing is an aspect of a shower, waterproofing is complete, I'll take another 30% of labor. And then once we are done with that tile, typically we're doing that shower, and then we've got, you know, some other finished stuff left to do. We typically take another 30% of labor once we're done with that shower. And then that leaves 40% left on the table, and I've gotten some advice to tighten that up so that I'm not leaving that much money on the table. But then that last 40%, I don't take that until we're all the way done. So I don't ever have to worry about materials. I've never had a kickback on it, not a single pushback on that. And I've never had to worry about not being able to afford materials. Sometimes I'm a little upside down as we get close to the end if I'm subcontracting a lot of that stuff out. Those guys like to get paid. So I don't know if that helps. If it's not,
I don't mind being a little bit upside down, but I don't want to be, 30, 40% upside down.
I'm usually not. Like if I am, it's maybe 10, 15%. I'm a couple $1,000 that I'll pay out a sub or whatever. And it's usually not ever much more than a week or two. We'll turn them around pretty dang quick. Now, granted, I'm not talking about like I don't have any 6-month kind of bathroom remodels. Mine are usually done in 30, 45 days.
Same. Thanks, man. Appreciate it.
That's good. For us, just a quick thing, and I'll let Jason or Jim go. I can't remember who was first, but for us, one of the things we would definitely say with that, and I don't know if you got the advice from Nicole already, Anthony, but yeah, front loading so that your final payment is at or under 10%. That way you're not leaving so much on the table for the last draw or that final punch list walkthrough. That's good. Yeah. Jason, you want to go ahead?
Yeah, I think Anthony kind of answered my question, like how long the job was taking him, and then John kind of said the same thing. If it's 30 to 45 days, because Nicole and I had the same conversation just the other day. Ours are shorter, and we're trying to change them, but we're trying to get it to where it's 10% that's owed. Right now we're 50-50, and she wants that second half down low, so we're changing to do that. But a lot of our jobs don't last longer than 7 to 10 days. So rather than just having the owner, keep sending us checks or whatever, we're trying to figure out the right way to, because we always get 50% down, and then it's 50% paid at the end. And thankfully we've never been bit, but it can definitely happen where you have that other 50%. So just trying to massage this to where it gets it down to where there's only 10% left. The final payment's just 10% left. So just curious of how long your jobs were, and I understand from what Anthony said.
And your payment plans, your draw schedules can totally change depending on how long the job is. Like when we give people our working agreements, we like tell them that, like, yes, we have like a draw schedule in here as an example, but like that doesn't mean you have to use that draw schedule for every single job that you're on. If for like my service guys, if you are going out to a job that's going to take a day or two and you get 50% up front and then you get maybe 25% and 25%, I'm not going to be mad about that. Like it's a very short job. Make sure to have a signed agreement and a contract. So if somebody tries to stiff you, you've got that to back you up. But for smaller jobs, you can kind of do those chunks and get away with it. But if your job is going to last more than a couple of days, we want to make sure that the smallest payment is at the very end. Money is always staying ahead of the work, just because it only takes one job going south and you're in a bad spot. But you can totally change up your payments depending on how long the job's going to take. And I love getting 50% up front. That's not going to be possible in every single job, especially if they're longer, but I'm not mad about that at all.
Yeah, the only thing I would include as well with what Nicole said, in that you're already thinking about this, but sometimes we may think that it's not good enough justification. But if your job duration is going to cross a payroll period, then you need to have another draw before that. And that's totally reasonable to communicate it that way to a customer as well. Hey, payroll comes, we're going to have these, we do payroll every other week, so we'll have a draw every other week, if that's kind of how it works out as well. And then determine what that's based on. Jim, go ahead. What you got?
We've been in that situation last year where we had a client not want to pay us 120 grand. So we were sort of stuck in limbo. Unfortunately, because of that, it caused me, because that dragged on for about a month or so and affected my payroll. So I had to take a loan out, and I learned a life lesson at that point. What we did is we had an issue with the change order. We didn't collect the change order right away, and we rolled it into the final payment, and that accrued to 120 grand. Sales guy we were damn near begging to get the money, and we had a contract, but we were going to have to, put a lien on them and deal with all that nonsense. So at that point, we've always did 50% up front. But our back end on the contract is 10%, and we do milestone payments. So we do full renos, so anywhere between 200 and 400 grand. And on the smaller projects, say it's a bathroom, we always do a milestone payment. So we always have 3, but the final payment's only 10%, just because of, and if they don't trust us, then I guess we're not working with them. It's just, I don't want to deal with the chasing money. It's just not worth it. There's good money and bad money. I just don't want to deal with chasing money like that.
That's good.
100%. Yeah. James, comment, concern?
So I was going to say, so I do bathrooms and kitchens as well, and some larger remodels. So I don't know how you guys are estimating your stuff, but I use the Redmond system where it's a cost plus. So all my line items are listed, and then I have the company overhead and company profit at the bottom. Here in Texas, I called it builder fee for a whole nother reason. But anyway, in my contract, I get the builder fee plus any materials that I need to order up front for tile, et cetera, like that. So it's not really a 50% or 25 or anything like that. But then my draw schedule is weekly work completed. So it just goes back to the estimate. If we did the demo and it's $1,500, I bill $1,500. If we get the shower done and it's $3 grand, so all of my draws go back to my estimate as each individual line item, and it's just completed work on a weekly draw schedule. So there's no question about whether it's done or how much it's going to be. It's all right there. And then the final, so I get the company overhead or the company profit, which happens to be 20%. And then the company overhead just happens to be 10%. So that company overhead is the last payment technically. So, but I just tell them, I use those numbers because they're flat 20% and 10%. So it makes it easy on math. But really the weekly draw schedule for work completed has worked tremendously for me.
Nice.
Love that, James. That
Collecting
might
your
open up
profit
questions
first.
about pricing. So I'm excited about it, but love that. Scott, I see your guys' hand up. What's going on?
Oh, you guys are muted.
We're just discussing between ourselves and making notes for ourselves. Apologize.
We love it.
You're good. Cool.
Okay.
Any other thoughts on that?
Questions? Jay, what's happening?
Jay, you're muted.
My bad. With the draw schedules, the way I've seen them work for me is you put them in stages. And me dealing with the projects, I always thought about the projects as the most important product. I mean, the part of the piece. So I always base it on stages completed. And initial payments, I would try to, depending on the size of the projects, smaller ones, I would hit 50% minimum. On the larger ones, anywhere from 20 to 30%. But I would always draw my schedules based on completions, but I would summarize it. Um, I wouldn't, I tried the breakdown stages. I mean, to break down each little category and price that way. It didn't work for me so well. But when I simplified it as a complete package and gave it as a single price and did pricing based on certain milestones that are completed, it worked out a little better as far as everybody understanding that that's due and not being complicated. And
Yeah,
at the end, yeah, leave as small as possible at the end. Absolutely.
love that, James. You can do milestones. You can also do time frames. If I have a client who's like consistently like, hey, we can't get paid on this because we're waiting on our cabinet supplier and everything else is done for this job and I paid for the labor and materials, but because the cabinets aren't done, I'm not able to collect on it, and so if you're somebody who runs into that, do time frames, not mile markers, and that's totally fine. Like if the project's going to last 4 weeks, you can have a draw schedule for each week wherever you're at on the project. Now obviously if you're not doing anything on the job, the customer's probably not going to want to pay you, but if you're doing something, like don't let something like, oh well, the fixtures aren't in so I can't collect for that. It's like, no, money has to stay ahead of the work. Let's not get into that pickle. And so just don't feel like you have to go by milestones. If that's caused a problem for you in the past, you can totally do time frames.
Nice. One thing, the last thing I'll add on this conversation for it too, because John, you mentioned that some people have given you a little bit of pushback. Not saying that this is your case, but it's something that we run into a lot with people, is you have to be confident in what your pricing is. People can tell when you're unsure, or you're still kind of feeling something or figuring something out. Just decide what it is, what it needs to be for the company, and communicate it that way. So I just want to say that as well as like a cherry or an exclamation point on this conversation, just to make sure that everyone knows that too. But that's important, is being confident in how you're pricing the way it needs to be, and then what the draw schedule is going to be. You're telling the customer, you're the expert coming in, giving them how it's going to work, because they haven't done projects. You do it all the time.
Yeah, it's generally been somebody who's been reading comments on Nextdoor and had their head filled with horror stories about being exposed because they gave 50% up to some chuck in the truck who needs your deposit check to pay for the bills from the previous job,
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So that I just had two things that popped into my head. One, I really appreciate what James said earlier, where he kind of explained to you guys how he comes up with his prices, and how he does the cost plus and how he makes sure that on every estimate, he's covering not just his profit, but his overhead too. And he knew his overhead percentage. He knows how much of his revenue goes towards overhead. I know that it's 10%. So I'm going to make sure that I have 10% on that job. And if I want to do 20% profit, I'm marking up my job 30%. And so sometimes we think, or clients can come to us with the impression that prices are something that you can just kind of come up with or that you can change at any given time. And it's like, no, if we know our numbers, we know what our prices have to be. order to get the percentages we need to pull in order to be a healthy business. And so that's how you can feel confident in your prices. Unless your overhead is just astronomical, which your coach will be able to tell you, your percentages are probably going to be pretty good within that like 30 to 40% is kind of what I see for most service companies. The other thing that I just want to touch on, because I feel like we haven't talked about it in a while, those horror stories happen all the time, with contractors and people having these nightmares experiences. Your Google reviews are a very good way to help build build credibility, but I'm not going to harp on that. Even better, I would say, is video testimonials from clients. People think reviews get faked. Like there is that kind of rumor, that impression. If you have a page on your website that has 5, 6, 10 different testimonials, just a client going selfie mode and saying, hey, I worked with John, I'm in blank area, they did blank for me, I'm standing in my beautiful remodeled kitchen, I loved working with them because of blank, 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 would highly recommend. If you're sending a link to your reviews and your testimonials page to new clients when they come in, when they hit your CRM system, which CMM can do this, wow, if they take a couple moments to read those reviews and those testimonials, they're going to be pretty sold on you and have quite a bit of faith before they even get to the price. And so I'm just using that as a plug, to say, hey, if testimonial videos isn't something that you've thought about, that is a great way, especially for remodelers, to build credibility quickly. Bren, I see your hand up.
Yeah, I was just going to go back and talk kind of about the structure of payments and stuff and the pushback. I think another important aspect here is that might help you determine whether or not that's a customer you want to work with. And I think customer selection is important. I know that sometimes beggars can't be choosers, but I would rather beg the right people. And there have been customers that I think all of us run into that we go, I wish I had not done this and I knew better. And so I think that's important too, as we're presenting money, because people get weird about money. And if immediately they're given pushback and having all sorts of issues, it's probably not the first time. I understand general concerns right off the bat and wanting to put them at ease. But if there's enough of that pushback, it might be a good indicator that they're not a good fit. So just want to remind myself and everybody else for that.
A healthy reminder. Sales is about sorting. We say that all the time. I would much rather see people giving less estimates to the right people than trying to give estimates to everybody. So very healthy reminder, Brent. And if anybody has trouble navigating that conversation when you're kind of vetting out your customers and trying to get price from them, because ideally we'd like to do that on that first phone call, we do have a call script that works pretty well. And so if you need help navigating that conversation, reach out to your coach. We can absolutely give that to you.
Nice. Great conversation. This is awesome. What other questions do you guys have this morning? What are the things that are scratching your brain? Go ahead, Remodeling Wizards. I'm sorry, I don't know your name.
Hey, it's Rose. Thank you.
Rose.
Good morning, everybody. So we are moving to a subcontractor model where we're going to sub out most of our work. And we're in this weird transition period right now. I was just wondering how people structured residential remodeling companies that are mostly subbed out between like W-2 employees. Like who do you have working as a W-2 employee? Right now we have a project manager and we have office staff. And we also have a carpenter and a helper in the field. But I'm wondering how other people have structured their W-2 staff.
Great question.
Mm-hmm.
Go ahead, Jim.
So we are basically just management and money, and everything that we do is fully subcontracted. We don't have any W-2 employees in the field. They all have COIs. All of our subs have COIs that fulfill the obligation for that location. I do have CMs, so construction managers on site, and salespeople. As we grow with my coach, we're going to be pivoting to PMs and more CMs and more sales as we grow. I mean, obviously, we just joined here about a month ago, so we're still growing. But I ran another construction company before that. I had all employees, and it was not that easy because guys don't show up, they don't do this. I'm spending more money on the labor if they're not getting it done. So it was easier for us. But to answer your question, it was just strictly we reverse engineered the project and we give it to our subs and let them bid on it. We already have teams that we work with, and on those teams, they have to fulfill the obligation, to finish that project for payouts. I don't know if it's perfect. I don't think there's any perfect system. It's just which one's easiest for you.
Chase, you want to add into that?
Yeah, I was just going to say that's our model as well, was the subcontracting. And so we're trying to kind of figure out like where the first hire would be, whether it's a project management or, something in the office. But yeah, I just wanted to add that's our model too. And also is anything like that affect a sale maybe for the company in the end, being that model?
Both are great questions, Chase. So typically the setup that we see the most is you have, the business owner, you've got a project manager and a office manager, I would say are the first hires. It's kind of up to you and your coach to kind of figure that out. And if you want an office manager first or a project manager, it's kind of dependent on what you want your role to be and where the ball's being dropped at the moment. And so that's going to be different case by case. What I will say is a lot of times one directly follows the other. Typically, if we get a good office manager in, it creates the need for that project manager pretty quickly because we're now booking a lot more sales appointments and more work's being generated. And then kind of vice versa. That project manager comes on, is taking care of a lot of jobs, and then it's like, oh shoot, I need somebody to help me with sales. Let's get an office manager in. So work with your coach to kind of figure out which one we want to do first. But a lot of times they kind of directly follow each other pretty quickly. Summit Home Solutions is a great example of that. Riley's the owner. Maria, who's on this call here, she got hired first as the office manager, and I think it was within a couple months that we hired Brooke, their project manager, and then they subcontract everything out. Once you get to a certain stage, you might need to add another project manager, or you might want, if you want to get yourself out of sales, that might be where you want to hire a salesperson. But we kind of can cross that bridge when we get to it. And again, that's going to be dependent on what you want your role to look like at that moment. Do you want to be more in sales or do you want to be more on the project manager side? And then when it comes to selling the business, I wouldn't say that's a huge factor, especially if you have good relationships with your subs where when you go to sell the business, you're like, hey, here's my sub list. Here's who pretty much exclusively works for me. I've even have a good idea of what their pricing is, so I don't have to call them out to estimate most jobs. Here's where I have that documented. So as long as you've got everything documented and you've talked to those subs or, hey, I'm about to sell, would you still, be willing to work for whoever comes on board if they, it's not going to affect necessarily the price. As long as you've got systems in place, kind of like we talked about last week. Whoever's buying it just wants to know that business is not built around you. So as long as you've got documentation, systems, proof that it works, it's not going to affect the price that you subcontract everything else out. A lot of times when people buy companies, employees leave anyways. So it's not even a guarantee that if you did have employees that they would go with the company, so not a huge concern.
Yeah. If anything on affecting the price, it just makes it more of a certain buy because they know here's the plug and play setup. It's already set up where it doesn't need specific people to fill that role. But yeah, one thing I would add too in that setup for primarily subcontracting out is that you're still going to want to have, a gopher kind of individual, maybe one or two where they've got some finished carpentry or they bridge the gap between subcontractors or on the final walkthrough. Your PM can function in this way sometimes, but you don't want them to do it all the time. Or they can kind of do those little details here and there. Sometimes material running, someone that you don't have to pay a whole lot to, but it helps bridge the gap at times.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Anthony, what you got, sir?
Yeah, I've got a question about how you pay your project managers. Is it, based on the revenue of what they're handling, or is it a salary, hourly? How's that look?
Another great question. Let's go. Anybody want to jump in on this before?
So I pay my guy a weekly salary, and then he makes bonuses on if jobs come in under budget and on time. And then I give him a little spiff for 5-star reviews so that he's managing the jobs, not only making sure the customers are happy, but making sure that we're coming in, and if we have extra material, we're returning the material and all that sort of stuff. So
James, you have just been full of best practices today, man. Like everything you say, I'm like, I don't even need to be on this call. James got it. Like he's given the advice I want to give. Like that is beautiful textbook. That's what we recommend. Get a salary that's livable but not necessarily comfortable, and then incentivize them on the activities that they're managing. That's merit-based pay. We love that. On time, under budget, on budget. Let's incentivize those things. Getting reviews, getting video testimonials. That's beautiful. Beautiful. Scott, I see your hand.
Well, we're getting on a subject that's striking close to home for us. We're really working, and what's in our crawl right now is merit-based pay. So it's a perfect segue here. So I figured I'd jump in.
Yeah.
We're service, so it's a little bit different than the remodeling model, but still trying to weigh that out. And would like to get as much input, because I know I've listened to people talk about it, and they're like, the more simple you can keep it, the better it works, because everybody understands it, and it's not convoluted. So I'm just curious on, and it would help, I hopefully remodel this remodeling question as well, on how other guys that are on here that do merit pay, how they base it. What are some of the tools you use?
Jordan, what's happening?
Hey, I don't know if anybody else is doing the merit-based pay, but obviously you guys know we just switched to that this year. And we noticed immediate change with the technicians. Matter of fact, he just told me he really actually likes it. And so my fear of like, oh, not sure if they're going to like this, kind of went away. But to speak to the simplicity of it, we basically set an amount they need to meet every week in order to get commission. Otherwise, they get basically a floor, an amount they know they make no matter what. But it's set to kind of be a bit uncomfortable to encourage, them to perform. And so, like for my guys, they got to do 6,000 in order to get commission, and we pay 20% commission. And then we also give them small bonuses for specific things like, if they do a panel change out or something, they get an extra $100 on top of commission. If they get a review, they get, some people call it a spiff. I don't love that term. I prefer a small bonus. And that's pretty much it. And he went, my main tech went from doing about, I don't know, on a low week, $1,500 to 3,000 on a really high week for him, to where he's doing anywhere between 6,000 and about 9,500 right now a week in revenue. So, and it was instant. It was like right as soon as we started, because he knew, they knew, oh, well, if I perform well, I'm going to get paid well. And the other things that came about it is their management of their jobs. He started seeing how multiple trips to the supply shop affected his ability to finish a job. And he ended up getting lower pay one week. And he was like, oh, man, like, I'm going to fix that. And so I get to watch them do stuff a lot better and work more efficiently as well. Did that answer all your questions, or was there more in that?
Well, we're strictly service, so that floor is kind of where we're struggling with. We just leave it, whether we leave it the hourly rate that the guys are working at now, and then go with a bonus
No.
amount, like, which
No.
go ahead.
No, because it's supposed to be uncomfortable if they don't meet commission. Otherwise, they have no incentive to perform. And I don't say that to be mean, but they'll never change their habits if you don't make it uncomfortable. So like my tech, paying him hourly, he was making maybe somewhere around 1,600 to 1,900 a week, but his floor is 800. So, and I think he got his floor once. Every other week he's been meeting commission.
Doesn't want to go back there.
No, he doesn't want to go back to that. But it was an easy conversation.
Yeah.
He didn't balk at it. When I called and talked to him about it, I'm like, hey man, this isn't to beat you up or anything. I just want to let you know where you're at. And of course, we meet every week to look at KPIs and how we're doing.
Yes.
Yes. And so like it didn't come as a shock to him. He was just like, yeah, I don't want to do that again.
Yeah.
So it took the pressure off of me when we had that conversation.
Yes.
So are you mostly service? Because what I'm seeing,
we're 90% service.
So what about these? You send a guy on a call and you get this. Well, you're sending me bad calls. This is I got there and it was just a flip breaker. I couldn't turn that into anything.
Everybody's going to get some of those calls. It's not just
Yeah.
going to be one. Everybody's going to get some. Everybody has equal opportunity, and so
I'm not saying there won't be guys that won't say that, but my guys don't say that.
And
because,
that's another point. This will
Yeah.
motivate an A player. This will weed out any C, D, F players. B players are either going to shape up or ship out. A players are going to love this because they're going to know I can make a lot more money doing this because I'm already producing well over what this minimum is. I know I can do this.
Yeah, and that's what you have to frame the conversation on, is what potential they have whenever you're making the switch.
There's ways to manage that too. So I started using this week a kind of just a self-evaluation form, because we do weekly training and, I train them how to do these service calls. We have a service call checklist from A to Z, and then next time, won't you sing with me? So that way they know exactly what they're expected to do every call so they can stay consistent. So he had one that he didn't win the day before yesterday, and we did a self-eval on it just to identify, hey, maybe why didn't we, if there's a way we can identify why we didn't win that call. And it ended up being where he didn't provide them enough options, because when I went back with him and we kind of redid the call and rebuilt the quote, I said, well, let's build a couple extra options in there and see where the prices come in. And he goes, man, this one actually would have fell kind of like right in the price that the customer had mentioned. And I was like, there it is. So having systems in place to help identify issues for those who may be complaining that, oh, I'm not getting a good call.
What valuable training.
Yeah.
What valuable training. And the only way that Jordan can do that is if we're tracking the numbers. And if you see this spreadsheet that I have pulled up here, and we can edit this puppy however you need it or want it, but what we would keep track is of each individual technician's activities. And so we would keep track of what tech it is, how much money they did that week, how much money got collected that week, how many jobs we sent them out on, how many jobs they completed, how many callbacks, how many reviews, what was their average ticket. And by looking at this publicly in our team meeting each week, okay, each guy got sent out to the same amount of calls. I have this guy telling me that all of his calls are bad. Let's talk about them. Let's go through each and every one. Let's learn what could we have done differently. Is this guy maybe getting all of the bad calls? I don't know. But if you make it very tangible and clear and we talk about it, and we become more solution focused as a team compared to excuse focused. Okay, we're getting sent to the same amount of jobs, but this guy's able to produce and close, but you aren't. What is he doing differently? Let's learn. That's going to be, you got to track the numbers. If you're going to go to merit-based pay, this has to be something we're tracking. We've got to make it public. We've got to review it, because that's how Jordan's able to give that great feedback and have those conversations with his team. I'm seeing some activities in the chat. Do we have questions coming in?
So my question was helpers and apprentices, and people are answering here saying they're paying them hourly. Is there any way, or is anybody working to incentivize apprentices, or see a way to incentivize apprentices or helpers?
For sure. So there's more bonuses type of situation. Whenever you do a merit-based pay for an apprentice that's on hourly, you give them the same kind of thing with bonuses like Google reviews, or there might be some responsibility as far as callbacks or um, supply house visits. You can be creative and work on what that can look like, but it'd be more itemized like bonus structure than like a straight commission.
And a good point to put with this, let's say that your minimum that each tech should bring in is $6,000 each week. If they have a helper with it, that bar gets raised. And it's okay, like, hey, well, the helper was only with them 2 days. Just make note of that in your KPIs. Helper was only with them 2 days. And so that raises the bar this much, but not this much. If they have a helper with them, ultimately they should be able, if $6,000 is a minimum, they should be getting close to 8 at least with having a helper with them. And these minimums are within a 40-hour work week. If he hit $6,000 but he worked 50 hours, that doesn't, no bonus. What's the minimum for his minimum 40-hour work week? And so just make note of those things. Or if somebody's on a really large project and so maybe we're not getting paid for it immediately, but it's going to make his total for the month well over that minimum, he would still qualify for those bonuses. Like all of those things are little caveats. So as long as we're paying attention to it and making notes, the merit-based pay system is still going to work for them.
Yep. And circling back a little bit for the project manager role, Chris Anderson, he put his in the chat. They're more of an hourly base with set incentives. Plus, when the guy sells, he gets 5%. Anthony, I think you've had your hand raised for a while. I think that's maybe something you were wanting to circle back to as well.
I picked up on that. Actually, my question was, I'm in the process of moving from hourly salary model for my employees to more of a piece rate, production-based model. And then I also have subs. My challenge is that is quality. Moving to the production-based. Yes, on paper, my guy, who would take 3 weeks to tile a shower is getting them done in a week. But the quality has gone from 90 to 98% to like 78 to 85%. And at some point, I'm new, so at some point I'm gonna have the question, how hard are we going for top-notch quality, and how hard are we just going for get in, get out, and be profitable? So is anybody else seeing that decline in quality, moving people to a production-based compensation?
If that
No.
happens, we let the person go.
Yeah.
They're a bad fit. Unless you have unrealistic expectations. If you're giving them unrealistic expectations where and the only person who's able to get it done within those hours of that quality is you. Sometimes business owners can have that perspective where they think everybody should be able to produce what they can, and that's typically not the case. But if we have realistic expectations, we're giving a realistic timeline for them for quality to be maintained, and they're not able to hit it, then that's just somebody we got to replace.
Yep. And that's where you also make your structure related to those quality aspects. If it's about callbacks or walk through punch list items or getting the great Google review, they're going to be naturally geared towards that if it's more of a requirement to engage that incentive program. Yeah.
Yeah, Jordan just put in the chat that he has a callback policy that if we've already paid you once to go out and do this work and you did it wrong, you're not getting any of your bonuses, and it's your responsibility to take care of that either on your own time or at minimum wage. And we have that callback policy written up. So if anybody needs it, email your coach. We'll get it over to you. But that's absolutely, everybody needs a callback policy. And this can apply to subs too, where it's like, hey, for subs, if IRPG wants to come out and do this and you did it wrong, we're calling you back out, that's on you. Or you're going to get terminated from the job and we're probably not going to use you again, Like that's not just for employees.
And yep, also a great point, Jordan. It's the culture. We don't sacrifice the quality in doing this. You know, it's up to you to maintain that and how you're meeting with, collaborating with, and enforcing all of this. But yeah, your company culture is gonna make sure that everybody's kind of meeting the same standards as well. And that's a conversation point that you have regularly. Man,
Great questions.
Cool.
yeah.
Excited.
Yeah. Yeah. And if a guy, always have them come to you, say, hey, if you think I'm not giving you realistic timelines, or if you're having trouble for blank, come to me. Let's talk about it. Let's be solution oriented compared to excuse oriented. Like help me help you. That's my job as the boss. But if it's just negligence, then that's time to find someone else.
Yep.
This has been awesome today, guys. Great client feedback, great questions. Here for it. Chris, what's going on, sir? Good to see you.
Great comment, Maria.
Thank you. I had a question about what's everybody paying for a sales only salesman, like a commission only, a base plus commission, just not project manager, but sales only salesman for a company. Remodeling company is what we do. But what's the norm for a sales only, potentially commission based salesman?
I'll chime in. I'll be honest with you. I'm out of Chicago. Everything's expensive here. I don't know where you guys are at. It's tough. We're a new startup and only been around about 2 years. And I just did my P&L with my coach, and it was sideways because we haven't had a lot of sales. So our larger sales, how we set it up is 3% of the project. So obviously the project that we do, so if it's $500,000, it's 15,000, but we set up a base pay. And because we're not doing enough revenue gen, because we're just so new and we're putting everything together, we had to restructure it so that it's a livable wage. It's very expensive to live in Chicago. So we had to pivot around that so that it's not the salesman's fault. It's myself as the owner that I'm not making the phone ring enough. And that's something that I'm working on, and we're doing it. We're getting it done now, but we had to move that around. So what we had to do was 52,000 base salary plus 3% commission. And we just weren't getting enough because the cost of living in Chicago is so expensive. It may be a little bit more affordable where you're at, depending on where you're at, to do that.
What I'll say on all of this, when you're doing percentages and merit-based pay, you have to know your numbers first. You have to have accurate bookkeeping, and you have to have, if you're going to do for like a project manager, commission based on their gross profit margin, you have to know numbers from your P&L, from your balance statement, and be able to consider like your break-even point, so you can actually come up with those percentages and be solid about them. You have to have accurate numbers. You have to know them and work it based on your P&L and based on your area, like Jen mentioned there at the end. So the exact percentage kind of varies, but for strictly sales, it's probably going to be something under 5% of the contract value, because they don't have anything to do with the way the project proceeds after they've made their sales. So they can only be responsible to the sale value. Great stuff though, guys. Yeah, work with your coach. When you're doing a merit-based pay system, work with us on this. We want to help you with that, and it has to be to some extent specific to your numbers and what you want to be able to give people. And every time you're going to do some sort of merit-based pay, make it where you can actually show realistic numbers. Hey, if we had done this last year for you, based on what we did in our business, this is what you could have made, versus what you did make on this regular salary, wage, whatever. So that'd be the 2 cents there. But guys, really appreciate all the feedback and the engagement on this call. This was a really good one. We'll end it the same way we always do, and we will unmute our mics, shout growth on 3, and then catapult into the last part of the week here and on to the next one. But appreciate you guys being here and all the feedback. This was good. All right, growth on 3. 1, 2, 3.
Growth.
Hi, guys.
Hello.
Thank you. Guys.